Thank you. I'm delighted to be here today. My involvement with TNCPE has been since its beginning. I was on the group that formed it back in the early 90s, and my work with the Baldrige, I've been a Baldrige judge and a TNCPE judge and an examiner in both programs. So I come to you as a Baldrige geek. However, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is, even if you are the Baldrige geek in your organization, even if you are the one who's responsible for getting all this done, can you do it by yourself? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I have seen so many organizations fail at this because they put together a group of 4 or 5 people and they said, y'all go off and do that. Y'all go off and do that. And instead, they missed the engagement piece, the bringing people along on the journey. Now, I'm a process person. Give me a good process and I'm a happy woman. I just love a good process. Any of you process people in here? Data people, process people? Good. But now let me share a frustration with you. For many years, I was VP for administration at Belmont, and I used to despair. I'd say, why don't people just do what I tell them to do? You know, life would be so much better for them and for me if they just do what I told them to do, right? Do you all know that frustration? What's wrong with Mike, I'd say. It's like he's left the building. I don't know what's going on with Mike. I think I even used words like, he's against this company's success. Several years ago, I got an aha slap in the back of the head. I went to work, do some work with the Gallup organization and with Marcus Buckingham. I got to study at Gallup and study with Marcus Buckingham. And what I learned was a real eye-opener for me. You know, I'm an old woman by now, and I thought I couldn't learn many new things, but I've discovered that, yes, indeed, I could learn something. And what I learned was, you only get commitment, you only get discretionary effort when people are engaged in the journey with you. That's the only time you get it. And so this notion of sheep dip training, do you all have that in your organizations? Where you just say, well, we'll send people through training. That'll change their attitudes. So we, like sheep, we just dip them in the training and we go along. Punishing people with rewards or lack of rewards gets you only one thing, and that's compliance. Do you want a compliant workforce? No, you want an engaged workforce. You want people to go with you on the journey. So we're going to start today with a little dialogue, and this is going to be loud, so stick with me here. And when I say stop talking, I want you to do that, or else I'll have to go shh. Okay? All right, so I want you to turn to another person here and tell them in fewer than 3 minutes what energizes you about your work. What energizes you, okay? And then you'll switch. So we'll take about 6 minutes. So find a person and tell that person what energizes you about your work. I wish you could have seen yourselves. I wish you could have seen yourselves. Your faces lit up. You had smiles on your faces. You were talking about things with somebody else, and the people who were listening to you were listening with empathy and smiles on their faces too. What does that tell us? What did you hear from other people? What energizes them about their work? What themes did you hear?
Connection to people.
Connection to people. What else? Making a difference. What else? Learning new things. Opportunity. I've got opportunity to grow here. What else? Purpose. We have a purpose.
Able to complete the task.
Able to get something done. Don't we need that? Yes. What else? Engagement. Yeah. And so when we think about harnessing that for our organizations, what you all just had in here, if we had a kilowatt meter on here of the energy in this room, it would be sky high. And so thinking about what is it that energizes and engages people in your organization is important. Now, whenever I talk about engagement, What we need in the world today is the ability to play the business game on a whole new level. The way we've done things in the past is simply not going to work. The fast communication, the turnover in the workplace, the aging baby boomers like me, things are changing, and we have to change the workplace. So how are you going to do that? Process is important. Yeah, we got that. But we accomplish what we do because of the talent, the skills, and the abilities of the people who are in our organizations. Not because what we leaders do, tell them to do. It doesn't work that way. Wayne Gretzky, you all know who Wayne Gretzky is, this fellow right here. When he first came to the National Hockey League, he weighed 160 pounds and he was 6 feet tall, and everybody who talked about him said he was too small to do anything, that he would never succeed in the NHL. Well, when I ask why he's so good, you know what he says? I skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. Isn't that profound? That's kind of a metaphor for what we need to be doing in business, isn't it? So he has this incredible knowledge, this deep knowledge of the game and physics. I mean, you have to understand physics to play hockey. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. But he has a very deep knowledge of the game, a very deep knowledge of the other players, and he knows where the puck is going. Now, Larry Bird, arguably a slow white man. True. I mean, now he is, and yet he's one of the best basketball players of our time. Why? He has this extraordinary peripheral vision. He knows what's going on in the court all the time. He was thoroughly engaged in the game. So, for many years in our businesses, we've got this vision out here, and we said, the leaders got up and said, here's our vision, right? Here's the vision. Y'all go do that. Go do the vision thing. Y'all work hard, go do the vision thing. Did it work? No. I'm going to read this statement to you, and you need to see if you can kind of internalize it. Success happens in organizations that are engaged with the most of the employees to execute those visions, not the number at the top. It's the slowest many versus the fastest few. More people in the organization engaged in following the vision or achieving the vision, that's what gets you there, not does the top team be able to quote the vision and the mission and the values. So what do we need to engage people in our organizations? We need more people engaged. Okay. Research tells us that there are several areas of our lives in which we are completely engaged. Guess what? It's not work. The first is, there are many of you in here who are sports fanatics. Anybody admit to being that? Oh, yeah. I'll challenge you to, unless it's a baby under 3, you will not find people sleeping at a sports event. What will you find? Raging fans, standing up, thoroughly engaged in what's going on the court or the field or the rink. Thoroughly engaged. Concerts is another one. Why do parrot heads get in vans and drive millions of miles to wear crazy headgear and scream at Jimmy Buffett? Why does that happen? Well, I'm not sure I know, but we would agree that they are engaged, wouldn't we? We would agree that they're engaged. Now, think of dinner with your best friend. Is it about the food? No, you're thoroughly engaged. When you were talking about what energizes you this morning, you were thoroughly engaged. Why does that not happen at work? Well, engagement turns out to be tapping into what people care about. That's what it comes down to. People want to be engaged. They want to be. How do we do that? Well, we have to meet people where they are in the organization, and you can't do it all yourself. Let me give you some facts, and these are on the handout, so you don't need to write them down. 70% of employees think they are not engaged in their work. This is the most recent Gallup data. 70% say that they are not engaged in their work. They're not engaged at work. 70%. Is that true in your organization? How do you know? Okay. 90% of all strategies are not well executed. That's Kaplan data. The cost to the U.S. economy of lack of engagement is $370 billion in lost productivity. So people say, well, engagement, that's a nice little thing. We can talk about that. But it costs us money. It costs us money. It's the equivalent of organizational cholesterol if you don't have an engaged workforce. You've got things clogging up your organization. I want to tell you the story of 3 bricklayers. There were 3 bricklayers who were working on a structure. And someone came to the first one and said, "So Pat, what are you doing?" Pat says, "I'm putting one brick on top of another. I mean, can't you see what I'm doing?" The second one was asked, "Well, what are you doing?" And Susan replies, "I'm building the east wall of this structure." And they said to the third one, "Well, what are you doing?" And they asked Jeff, and Jeff replied, "We're building a cathedral that will live forever and motivate people to come and worship and live better lives." Now, who is engaged? Who's engaged? Jeff is engaged. And how do we get people to that place so that they know what they're doing in our organizations? I teach negotiation in the graduate business program, and we talk a lot about the superordinate goal. What is the overarching goal of your organization? It may be stated in your vision statement, or it may not be. You know, Caris Healthcare says we impact lives. And Cigna, I'm sorry, I said Caris. I was thinking another C word. Thank you. So we impact lives. And so by doing that, they're helping their people be engaged in that. There are some keys to engagement. And we're going to spend the rest of our time this morning talking about what those keys are. This is from a great little book called The Art of Engagement by Jim Howden. And he, you know, he talks about these things, and I'm going to kind of wrap it around what we know about TNCPE and Baldrige. People want to be part of something big. Making a difference was one of the themes that you all said here today. And so you're running an organization. Just telling people we impact lives is not enough. People need to see the top of the puzzle box. Think about that as a metaphor for what your role as a leader is. Have you ever tried to put together a jigsaw puzzle without the top of the puzzle box? How possible is that? It's not possible. And yet we think people know what they're supposed to do to impact lives. Instead, we as leaders need to be clear about what the big picture is. Show them the top of the puzzle box. Talk about it. Tell stories about it. Make sure people understand it. Search for that superordinate goal, like we're building a cathedral that will impact this community for centuries. Now, one of our Belmont grads, Tricia Yearwood, decided that she wanted to be part of something bigger. And so in 2008, she walked the 60-mile Susan Conan breast cancer walk. 60 miles is a heck of a long way to walk, by the way. I haven't done it, but I hear it's very difficult. And now you'd think that she already had enough difference making with her music and that sort of thing, but she felt like she really wanted to be part of something bigger than that. And her husband, Garth Brooks, said he wanted to be part of something cool like that too. Well, so what did he do? He re-released his Ultimate Hits album and put a pink cover on it and raised $10 million for breast cancer research. And a few months ago, I saw football players in the National Football League wearing pink shoes and pink what? Gloves and pink things. We don't know what else pink they had on, but I would bet they had on pink underwear. Now, people want to be part of something big, and you need to illustrate to them through the superordinate goal of what the top of the puzzle box looks like. How can you help people see the engagement possibilities in your organization? When Nashville went through the flood here, We Are Nashville, and the community came together in a way that was just beyond profound. It just was amazing. And people went out of their way to do things. I don't know if I can tell you this without crying, but we had a friend who lost everything out in River Plantation. And we went out there as soon as we could get out there, and we're tearing down stuff, and we're moving stuff out. And there's a guy there working alongside of us who I didn't recognize, and I said, "How do you know the maze?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know the maze." And I said, "Well, why are you here?" And he said, "I know that if this had happened to me, I'd want somebody to do the same thing." So he was from Cincinnati. He had called work and said, "I'm not coming in. I'm taking 4 personal days, and I'm going to go help." People want the opportunity to be engaged in something bigger than themselves. And so figuring out how you can engage people to the delight of customers and making that connection is something that you need to be about. Now, I do a lot of work for the Disney organization. And one of the things that you may not know, have any of you been to the parade? The Disney parade? Oh, raise your hands and be joyful. Yes. Okay. So yay. So my guess is that you don't know that behind the Donald Duck costume or the Goofy costume is a Disney executive. Did you know that? They are required to walk in that parade and look at the faces of children so that they know the impact of their everyday executive work on the work of Disney. What's Disney's motto or their vision? We create magic. They want their executives to see the magic in the eyes of children. And so they put them in the costumes, and they're marching down the street. Isn't that fabulous? So how do you connect the people in your organization with your customers in such a way that they are engaged and see the differences that they make? Well, you need to create shared meaning. Just having a bullhorn and a criteria booklet will not get you the Tennessee Center for Performance Excellence Award. Will it? No, won't do it. Will not happen. So people want to go on a meaningful journey with you. Robert Redford has a great quote I'll read to you. Nobody wants to sum up a lifetime by saying, "I did a heck of a job maintaining what was already here." Instead, we all want to say, here's what it was like when I came, and here's what it's like now. There is meaning in what we do, and we need to create that shared meaning. If you all are not memorizing, what's the word? Memorialize. Thank you, good word. I'm past 60, so I have those momentary lapses. If you are not memorializing your journey in TNCPE, you're missing a great opportunity for people to understand the impact of what they do on the journey. Look at what we used to be and look at what we are now. One of my great friends at Cigna named Kay, makes proposals now using stories, and one of the things that she does is she used to have these PowerPoint bullets with, these PowerPoint slides with 6 bullets and all these facts and figures. And I just saw her in the hall, and she said, "Susan, you'll never believe my recent presentation. I had 4 words on the slide." What's she doing? She's documenting how, she's telling a story, documenting how she's meaning making. We want that shared meaning of our journey. I believe it's because we need to tell stories about how we live out our values. I want to tell you about my daughter Laura, if you'll indulge a personal story. She was a basketball player. And when she first joined the league out in Franklin when she was a little girl, she did everything the coach told her to do. She practiced. She shot hoops with her daddy every night. She wanted to be a basketball player. In fact, when they gave her the choice of being a cheerleader or a basketball player, she picked basketball. Okay, so that tells you how much she loved it. But her coach, every time they had a game, would play his daughter, and the same 4 girls. That's all. These 10 little other girls sat on the bench and didn't get to play. Now, every Saturday, she'd come home, and eventually, here's what started to happen. She began to resent the other players. She hoped one of them would break an ankle. She silently cheered for the other team. How many of you have experienced the same phenomenon at work? Not the job you've got now, but you know what I'm talking about. Another job, yeah. We're excited when we come to an organization. We're so excited to be there, and then we get disillusioned, and then we get disengaged, and then we leave. Now, the unfortunate thing is, Mary, some people leave emotionally before they leave physically, and what are they in your organization?
Retirement plus.
Yeah, yep. They're deadwood. They're the cholesterol in the arteries of the organization. But most of us get that way because we can't play fully, because we are not engaged, because we are not given the opportunity to make a difference in our organizations. You don't go to work the first day of work not being excited about being there. And so how do we do that? Well, one of the ways is certainly creating shared meaning. Now, I'm going to give you a word, and the word is bear, all right? Now, think of bear. What came to mind? A teddy. What came to anybody else's mind? A brown bear. A grizzly bear. Anybody think naked? Okay. I knew you would. I would too. So there are lots of meanings of the word bear, right? And different images come to our minds. When we have organizations that put words out there and we don't clarify what those words mean, everybody's got their own definition of bear, right? And so by not clarifying what it means to be student-centered at Belmont, we miss the opportunity for people to engage differently. So creating shared meaning is important. Now, I told this story in the session that I did just before this one. So for those of you who are stick-arounds, forgive me, I'm going to tell this one again. My friend Jean Rush, who is the president of Cigna, has a wonderful initiative going on, and they're going to win the highest award that TNCPE gets tonight. It's a big day for you all, isn't it? Let's give them a hand. Significant. Yeah. And they have a great set of values and a great set of organizational guiding principles. When they first came to town fewer than 10 years ago, Jean their offices weren't complete, and so they had to work out of the Maxwell House Hotel. And one of the things you should know is they are keepers of the world's Social Security system. I mean, in terms of numbers. They've got everybody's Social Security number who has Medicaid. And so they have confidentiality of data, and keeping that data safe, one of their core things. I mean, they have to do that, right? You don't want your stuff. So at night, everybody would have to, you know, they'd have these laptops full of all this information, and you can't leave it in a locked hotel room. You can't. That's not secure. So an employee didn't go to Jean, but figured out a way to solve that issue. She went out to Costco and got a gun safe, had it delivered, and every night people would shut down their laptops and put them in the gun safe to keep them safe. Now, Jean tells that story now to illustrate several things about, you know, about that organization. What do you now know about Cigna, having just heard that information about their engagement? Frontline people can make a decision. They think outside the box. What else? They're empowered to make a decision. They're creative, and they live by their values. She tells that story now in orientation. She's creating shared meaning. What does she do by that? How does she create shared meaning by that story? People know that they're empowered to do things, that they live by the values there. So, now, this is my favorite. Can you all see what that little guy's doing? Yeah. I actually have had students do this. Not fun. Okay. We are so serious in business today. We are just as serious as we can be. But you know, the folks at Caris obviously have one of the tougher jobs in the world, right? They help people and families die with dignity and pain-free as they can possibly be. I mean, I don't know what your mission statement is, but I think that's what you do. Is that right? How am I? That's what you do. And yet, we would all agree that's pretty serious. It could be downer and sad, but do you remember when they won the TNCPE award? What did they do? They laughed, they had fun, they threw a party like you wouldn't believe. Why? What does humor do in your organization?
It helps.
Yes, it helps. It helps. People want the opportunity to have humor. Martha Kelly, who's one of my best friends, and she's roaming around here helping with the conference. When she was at Belmont, we had a Lighten Up team. You know, we in higher ed take ourselves so seriously, and it's just, I mean, it's a shame. And we'd have a little team that had a grapevine to tell good gossip, and we had events, we had chili cook-offs, we tried to lighten up the place. In order to have people engaged, they need to have some fun. They need to have some fun. So figuring out what fun can we have? How can we use humor so that people can be engaged? Let me tell you what Southwest Airlines does. Every 4 years, they burn their policy manuals. They have a big bonfire. Truth. In Dallas, they have they have a hangar, and they bring in all their policy manuals, and they burn them. And everybody hoops and hollers, and they put on stupid costumes. And now, what do you know about engagement, and what do you know hearing that story? What are they communicating by doing that? What are they communicating? We have a good time, but what about the policy? Time for change. You get a button. That was good. Time for change. We're not going to do things the way we always have been. We're going to start afresh. And so they use humor in what they do. And have you been on a Southwest Airlines flight? I mean, It's essentially a cattle car. I mean, not as much as it used to be because you now have a position, but I love Southwest. It's my corporate airline because people seem to be engaged. The people who work there are engaged. I get engaged, and they send me drink coupons too. But anyway, so we're going to do another exercise here, and I want you to find somebody new to talk to this time, and I want you to talk to each other for 3 minutes each about what your organization does to have fun and use humor. And if you don't have anything to say, listen well, okay? All right, so talk about how your organization has a good time. What good ideas did you hear? What was somebody else doing that you went, wow, that sounds great? What'd you hear? Tina?
That these executive people that you see a lot in your companies that are so serious all the time and always on game can really be funny when they need to be, and to break the ice and let people know that they do have a good time as well.
They can be people.
Yes.
What'd you hear, Debbie?
Well, I think what we talked about was, there are some traditional kinds of events or things that are planned, but that really sometimes the most fun is when it spontaneously happens and you have the wherewithal to let it happen.
Yeah, to just one of my clients, when they get a new account, they have a bell ringing, and it's fun, and everybody stops what they're doing and goes out and hoops and hollers. That's East Tennessee for yell. Okay. So, what else did you hear? What'd you hear, Benita?
Oh, well, that they do things like potlucks. And then the other thing that I like is that their senior leadership wear Hawaiian shirts on Friday. And I asked him, I said, so do you all have outside customers that come in? And he says, yeah. And I says, how does that go? Well, they're like, wow, what's going on here? And then if they come in and have, their suit and tie on, then their CEO offers them, if he's got an extra Hawaiian shirt.
How great! How great! And what do you do? What happens in an organization that sees senior leaders doing that kind of thing? They're people. They're not figureheads. They're engaged. They want people to be engaged and having a good time. What'd you hear, Susan?
Well, we talked about some of the traditional things that go on, but one thing that she was telling about that I really liked was to use a luncheon so that people could either bring food, bring their own recipes, they could also, or pay for their lunch that day. And then money goes also to some type of charity or some way that they decide as a group.
Difference making. People want to make a difference, and so aligning humor and difference making. Ooh, I love that. What'd you hear? Excuse me. Oh, pie throwing. I like that one. How about you, Tim? What'd you hear?
Lunch and learns, just getting together, actually having people help coordinate those events.
People volunteering to do that. There are people in your organization that want to have a good time. Find them. Find them. Search for them. Ask for them. What'd you hear, Mike?
Lunch and learns, getting together and just having poking humor, fun, getting to know each other.
Anybody hear something that was outrageous and wonderful that you need to share?
I'd like to share his, and you'd be able to tell a little bit better than me, but he's a very small company he works for, 45 employees. What's the name of it?
Belmont.
And they shut down for a week a year for training for their employees, but in addition to that, the owner actually cooks the food for all the employees himself every time, and they have Uno competitions, and they go bowling, they do fun stuff like that.
That's great. One of the organizations I work for has a ping pong tournament every year. They close the place down. It's a large company, and they root for teams of ping pong players. Now, on one level, you'd say, well, that's frivolity. On another level, you'd say, if you don't do things like that, if you don't have an opportunity for people to be engaged, remember the metaphor about when are we most engaged? When we're cheering for something, when we're passionate about something. Anybody hear anything else that you want to talk about that was really kind of out there and unusual? But aligning humor and fun creates engagement. Okay. Number 4, we need to allow people to solve their own puzzles. And for some of your executives, this is very difficult because they want to tell people what to do. Now, there are parameters to doing business. I mean, Mel runs a very successful business, and there are parameters to what people can do. We know that. And so setting those parameters is important, but then allowing people to solve their own puzzles. From Sudoku to crossword puzzles to jigsaw puzzles to whatever, people don't want to be told the answer. Unless they're asked. Unless they're asked. Now, we've got the answers in the back of the book, don't we, to Sudoku and all that. And sometimes you just need a little hint. But most people want to solve their own puzzles. When I first started work in the corporate world, I was a salesperson for Wang Laboratories. Do y'all know what Wang is? Anybody in here old enough to remember Wang word processors? Yeah, okay. And so they were getting into the office automation market, and I was a salesperson for office automation products, and I was coming out of education. And so my boss said, he was awful, by the way. He came in and he threw these forms on my desk. He said, by Friday, close of business, I need you to get all those forms filled out and get them to me so I can make my report to the regional hoop-de-hoop. I said, that's fine, I'll do that. Not, here's how you fill out the forms, here's why they're important, not anything like that. And so I did the best I could, but I didn't do them correctly. Didn't do them right. Monday morning, he essentially ripped me all over the place. He said, I had to come in here on Sunday afternoon to get this done. You failed, you're miserable, and whatever. And I said, you know, I would have come in over the weekend and redone them. All you had to do was tell me. People want to correct their own mistakes. They want to solve their own problems. If we don't give them the opportunity to do that, they will not be engaged in our enterprises, period. They want to make a difference, and in doing so, they want to figure out how to do it themselves. Now, do we have to give them parameters, Mel? Of course we do. But we don't need to tell people how to tie their shoes. We need for them to be able to solve their own problems. And we need to provide a safe place for people to work things out. Solving their problems is important. Now, stop is more important than start in engagement. We are so darn busy today. How many of you are thinking about what you've got to do when you get back home? Because you know you've been in this session and you're going, oh, Lord, how will I ever get it done? We are so busy. Emotions, commitment, loyalty, they all revolve around doing things well. If we put more on people's desks than they can possibly do well, how engaged are they? They aren't. They want to do the minimum and get the heck out of there because they can't do anything well. So one of the things I encourage my consulting folks to do and my graduate students to do is to have a conversation inside their organizations about what can we stop doing. What can we stop doing? Because I can't do everything well, and I need to know the most important things to do because I want to make a difference. And if I can't make a difference because I got too much to do, it's a cycle that is just ridiculous. And then you put on top of it all this TNCPE stuff, and people say, well, it's supposed to be the way you do your business, but then you got to do your business and this. How engaged are people? They're not. So having conversations, deep, honest conversations, what can we stop? Stop is more important than the next initiative. Give people permission to stop doing things that are not value added, that they don't feel make a difference, and to have that conversation. And you have to for those of you who are leading an initiative, you have to be willing to hear it. Because it's like just asking students what they think, they'll tell you. If you ask employees what they think, they'll tell you. And you have to be willing to hear it. Now, can you do everything just the way the employees want you to do it? No. But you can provide the parameters around which we can make decisions about what we do, how we do it, how much time we spend on things. So stopping is more important than stopping. So what questions do you have now as you think about engaging people? How are you going to do it?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Yes.
You talked about the 3 brick layers.
Yes.
And you said what should be done there. The first girl who was just putting 1 brick on top of the other, she might not have even known what she was
That's right.
doing.
And that's the role of leadership.
So whose fault is that? That's the management fault for not telling her what she's building, how important her contribution is, and what it's going to look like when it's done. She might have just been told to lay 1 brick on top of the other.
That's exactly right. And that's the role of leadership.
Right. So that's
leadership owns the system of improvement in the organization.
Right. And a lot of it's educating.
It's educating, but it's not sheep-dip training.
Right.
It's figuring out the system, understanding the system at a very deep
Well,
level.
giving your employees knowledge.
Giving them knowledge, helping them make those decisions. What else?
I think that all of that to do also with how you treat your employees.
How you treat your employees lets them be engaged or not. All right, I did this in the other session. I'm going to ask you to do it too. What is one thing that you learned that you can take back to your practice tomorrow? Just one thing. Did you learn anything in here that you can do tomorrow that you can take back? It's okay to have fun. I love that one. How about you, Tim? People what? Want to be engaged, right. How about you, Mel?
Stop doing things that are not productive.
Yep. Stop is more important than start. What about you, Shane?
Fill the top of the puzzle box.
Give people the top of the puzzle box. That's what you're talking about back there, too.
Really, people want to fix their own problems, and a lot of us are just problem solvers.
I know. We think it's our job. We think we are the chief problem solvers of the world. And one of the best questions that I learned to ask was, well, what do you think should be done? People bring me a problem. I say, well, what do you think? You know, they have brains too. They can figure it out. What are you going to take back, Tina?
Several things.
Several things? Top of the puzzle box is one. Lillian, how about you?
Yeah, that one was the one that really struck me.
Okay. Daryl?
I like the start versus of the stop is more important than start.
All right. Anybody else have one they'll volunteer? Yes.
I like when you started out, we get discretionary effort when people are engaged.
They will give you discretionary effort. They will stay late. They will come in early. They will give you 110% if they're engaged. If they're not, they're all about compliance. You all have been absolutely fabulous. I've loved being with you. Email me with questions, and there's a handout up here. Do you have something you want to end with?
Let's thank Susan for